growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, you Road to Growth listeners. I have Aaron Rubin on the podcast today. He's a partner at Werba Rubin Papier. I think I said that right? I know I asked you before, but it's Papier, right? Is that right?
You're really close. It's Werba.
Werba. That was the one that I messed up. That's the one I was so confident on.
You didn't miss my name, which is really the important part of the whole thing. So.
Exactly. So CPA and CFP, helping people. Financial planning, financial goals, planning for the future, and I guess you have a kind of a hyper focus on individuals that work in corporate world, stock options, kind of how the best way to kind of grow their wealth, huh?
Yeah, that's sort of our thing. It's an interesting space. Lots of players and people, and a lot of need out there because taxes are ever present. It's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. And we get to help people with that all the time. And people that have their preferred charities, or they want to help their kids out or grandkids, whatever it might be, we get to help guide them to keep more of their money, which to me is pretty important.
What do you think is one of the bigger mistakes that you see more frequently?
Yeah, a lot of people in the stock option space, they won't calculate their tax ahead of time. What I hear a lot of is, I know I'm going to owe tax, and that's helpful to know you're going to owe tax, but you got to know how much tax you're going to owe, and more importantly, how are you going to limit it? So I think a lot of people, they don't go through the calculations they need to go through because they don't realize that they've stepped on a landmine, which is what we see a lot of. So people who they're exercising their incentive stock options, and they're like, well, I bought the stock, I didn't sell anything. Why would I owe tax? And the answer is because you do, because the government says you do. And if you don't pay them, they're going to get very angry. And so that's what I see a lot of, is a lot of AMT issues, alternative minimum tax problems.
Well, let's rewind. A young Aaron, was he a planner? Was he someone that loved numbers? Who was a young Aaron growing up?
Yeah, a young Aaron growing up. I'd say the youngest version of Aaron wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I really liked environmental science and that sort of thing. So I didn't go to college to do what I do initially, I went to Claremont McKenna College, and they have a very specialized major called environment, economics and politics, it's a super cool major. I studied a semester abroad in Spain, and after I got back, I had to take one more economics class, to kind of, and so I was a second semester junior. And so the only class that was available that worked in my schedule was accounting. So sort of on a lark, I signed up for accounting. My dad's an accountant, by the way. And I always swore that I would never be an accountant. But I had to get this class done. So I went into class. It was an 8 a.m. class, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I showed up at 8 a.m. Monday morning. And by the end of the week, I was an accounting major. Wow. It just spoke to me. And I loved it. And I'm glad I did it.
Okay, before we dive into why you loved it, I'm curious, with your dad being an accountant, why did you originally not want to be an accountant?
I wanted to do like my own thing. I didn't want to, I always wanted to just do something different, and so I had it in my head, when you're young, and your dad's always trying to tell you what to do, you just like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm just not going to do anything like, my dad's doing. And, of course, later on you realize, your father's wisdom, but it again took me a long time to get there.
So an unloved child and became loved again once he told his father that he was going to
I come from like the most awesome nuclear family ever. So, I would definitely not an unloved child, but I think my dad had a bit of told you so in him after that. Didn't say it, but I'm pretty sure he was thinking it.
Now, okay, you figure out that you're going to be an accounting major, going through school. Now, then transition from graduating to getting to the workforce. What did that look like for you?
It was all over the place. So senior year of law school, I applied to be I probably go to law. Sorry, skipped ahead there. Senior year of college, I decided to apply to law school. Actually, I always wanted to be a lawyer. That was my first. My first was veterinarian, and then I decided later I wanted to be a lawyer. And it was a lot of LA law back in the late 80s, and so I took a year off. I worked for not for profit for a year, and then I went to law school, and because I had the accounting background, I'm like, you know what, I want to be a tax attorney. Like that's gonna be my thing. And so I took a lot of classes in tax. I took a lot of classes in constitutional law as well when I was in law school. And my second, and I got my second year legal internship, which for those not in law school or have never gone to law school, that's like the big internship year is your second year. I split my summer. I had a job with the Air Force, which was freaking awesome. And then I had a job with Deloitte in their state and use tax department. And so that was all planned on. And then I actually met my wife, who was going to be my wife, and just very quickly decided to get married. And we didn't get married right away. We waited a year, but anyway, she was like, I want to talk to my dad. He's in this wealth management space. And I was like, whatever, okay, fine. And so I talked to him. He's like, how would you like to do, what I do? And, I looked around at my peers in law school, and they were, they're going to, bust their butt. They're going to make a lot of money, but they were going to bust their butt and just, be researching all day long. And, my father-in-law, he got to help a lot of people, and he made a lot of money doing it, and he didn't have to work, 90 hours a week, to accomplish that. And I thought, well, gosh, that sounds pretty good to me. And he said, well, that's great. But you need to get accounting experience first. You need to get tax experience, because he was running a tax practice at the time. So I said, okay. So I spent 3 years in public accounting after law school. So I, as my mom would say, I was never a real lawyer. But I spent 3 years doing that. I got some great experience working on high net worth individuals and trusts and estates. And then my father-in-law said, all right, well, how do you feel about joining my firm now? I said, but now it's as good a time as any, because I'm not a big fan of this whole like busy season thing, where you work in a godly amount of hours for 2.5 months out of the year. So I joined him about 13 years ago, and it's been great.
So your father was an accountant, and your father-in-law has the firm, basically accounting firm.
Yeah, so he had a tax firm, so it wasn't really. Not to get too much in the weeds, right? There's accounting firms which actually do like audits and stuff, and then there are more tax firms. So he had a tax firm. So yes, he was also a CPA.
Okay,
is a CPA.
And your wife basically got her a accounting degree, or what degree did she?
No. I met my wife. I got her master's in public health.
Okay, public health.
When I was in law school. So
I was trying to see how big the circle got.
Yeah, no, you know what? My father, I would have loved to have his daughters go into the business, but they didn't really have a passion for it. And my sister-in-law is phenomenal. She ran a gym for a while, and she's now a therapist, and she's great. And my wife got her master's in public health. So they're not finance people though.
So joining your father-in-law's company, that has to be, because he was already established at the time?
Oh yeah. He'd been working in the space since the early '80s. He'd done. He was a pioneer in the industry, really. A lot of the things that you see today, in the finance world, he either started it or was a super early adopter of it. When the broker model, which used to be the only model that there was, for the most part, he didn't do away with it himself, but he was really one of the first to adopt, hey, I don't need to be a broker. I can charge this asset under management fee, which was really cool. So he'd been in the industry for a very long time.
How did your mindset change from basically that younger kid that didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, yet basically this older gentleman that's basically following in his father-in-law's footsteps?
Yeah, I like to say what I learned the most, what the biggest lesson that I learned in law school, was pragmatism, and that is taking your opportunities as they come. And if you start getting dogmatic about, oh well, I'm not going to do this or I want to do that, you're going to miss opportunities along the way. And so my whole thing has been and again, I've always tried to be flexible, but really law school is all about, hey, you have these new sets of facts and circumstances, apply what and kind of work around that problem. And that's sort of how I started to view it was, I didn't plan on doing what I'm doing. But the opportunity came around, and sometimes you just have to recognize when something great is right in front of you and you got to take it.
Now, working the ranks, how long did it take you to kind of work the ranks to become a partner?
It was a while. So, I was 26 when I got out of law school. I spent 3 years in public accounting. So I was 29 when I joined my father-in-law, he was while he was a pioneer in kind of the way in the financial industry, he was his training program was a lot of mentorship. So I spent the first spent the first 2 years just basically sitting in on meetings, and kind of seeing how things get done. And like kind of every punk kid, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do that differently. All right, well, that's kind of cool. I like that idea. And kind of go. And then opportunity came around in 2011 to purchase a book of business from a retiring advisor. And I did that. And so once I did that, I had my own book of business with my own, income stream that I was generating, and then I just kept building on the book from there. So, I think I officially became a partner in 2018. But I was really kind of had my own book of business starting in about 2011.
For people that are like joining a family business, right? I mean, I've had people in that sector before, right? And one of the things, especially more so for, I guess, the older generation, kind of looking towards the younger generation, is the idea of that we already built these structures, and now I have to find a way to allow you to adapt to what we're doing and also allow you to grow. So how was that, again, that mindset of you basically moving up the ranks and wanting to put your own spin, basically own touch on this company?
Working in a family business has a lot of benefits. It has a lot of challenges to it. I think my father-in-law and I are very well suited to work together, just because I stay out of his business and he sort of stays out of my business, and I can bounce ideas off of him. Certainly, whenever I want to, and he'll occasionally bounce ideas off of me, but there's a dynamic there for sure. Part of it is you have to have the right personalities in place. And I've seen a lot of people in my industry that they try to bring kids on board, and it does not work out. I'd say more often than not, it doesn't work out, because and maybe it's a parent-child thing, and maybe because I'm not actually his child, it's he can't. Yeah, and I'm not saying he would, but it's different when you grow up with a person than if you meet them later on in life. So, and certainly if he was my dad, like I would probably voice my opinions more forcefully, which probably would have rubbed him the wrong way. Because I told people this all the time. I said, as much as like some of the things that he does drive me crazy, I'm sure there's twice as many things that I do that drive him crazy. And as long as you have that live and let live, mentality, everyone's gonna be okay. But there are a lot of people out there, they can't do that, and either it's because of their relationship or just they're just how they're made up.
Well, you also said too that there's a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. I mean, what are some of the other kind of, I guess, positive and other some negatives of kind of being in the structure that you're in?
Yeah, the positives have, in terms of working with the family business and someone who has an established structure, as you said, is that there is a safety net there, right? I didn't really have to worry about failing. I mean, if I didn't give effort, like that's a different problem. But in terms of, hey, this is going to take me a while to develop. Like I got a lot of leash that my guess is if I was working for a different firm, maybe that leash wouldn't have been as long. So that was really helpful. And the negative part is, if the other person, and my father-in-law very rarely did anything, that would really actually anger me, because again, he's super easy to get along with and a really nice guy, but occasionally it would happen. It'd be like, okay, and by the way, I used to live like 2 blocks from where he lived. So like, I mean, we would, and I had my first child in 2010. So right after, I joined with him. That's when I started having kids. So I'd see him like all the time, and his wife all the time. And it's just like, okay, I need to, even if I'm a little bit ticked about something, like you gotta tuck that away. Cause you gotta see them a lot, and same thing, like, and if something happens at work, and I want to tell my wife about it, I gotta be a little more careful, because, it's a family thing, and you just gotta, you have to have, it does require at times more patience.
So how, in those frustrating times, how do you work through yourself that frustration? I mean, is it working out? Is it taking a jog? Is it reading a book? I mean, taking a nap? I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, for me, I always try to put in perspective, and again, I always think to myself, okay, this is annoying me, but I'm sure that there's something that I have done in the last 24 hours that has really annoyed him, and I just, you got to set it aside. So yeah, it's again, for me, it's all about perspective, and he's never done anything that has been detrimental to me ever. And that's another benefit of working with family, is that you don't worry about people's motivations, right? His motivation is he wants his family, his grandkids, his daughter to be taken care of, and we're on the same page as that. So he would never do anything that would jeopardize a career or income or anything like that. It's always been, everyone's on the same page. It's all about the family.
Well, okay. I know you talked about basically the kind of separation of work life to family life, right? If there is a topic that does arise, how do you, I mean, and you've probably learned a different way of doing it over the years. Do you say, okay, we need to talk about this topic, and make sure that it's over when you actually leave that conversation, it doesn't fester into the family life?
Yeah. Again, part of it is the nuance of our particular group. Because we sort of have our own little books of business that we're responsible for ourselves, essentially managing. Again, we don't have a lot of conflict, like that, and the other thing, and is that about 4 years ago, we merged with another firm as well. So now there's a third partner. So that's been really helpful for me, and I think for him too, by the way, where if my partner and I have an idea of how to kind of further that business, and my father-in-law is not as into it, sort of now we can have a bigger conversation. And when there's a third person in the room, it sort of changes the dynamics a little bit. And I'm sure my father-in-law has gone to my third partner and had ideas for me too. And again, I actually feel bad for my third partner, who's wonderful, by the way, Jason Papier. Great guy and peacemaker extraordinaire. It's that's been also, I think, helpful as things have evolved, is having someone else in the business than just my father-in-law and I.
Well, talking about the growth that you've had of the partnership between you and your father-in-law, and now the bringing in a third partner, I mean, where do you see growth in your company in the next 5 years? Is it bringing on another partner? Is it expanding? And what are your plans?
Yeah, I think before our third partner joined us, I think we were actually looking at a lot of inorganic growth. So we were purchasing businesses, I'd say, over the last 13 years. Well, let's say 10 years. Excuse me. We've probably purchased 5 books of business in that time. And that market has changed significantly in our industry. So it's not as readily available as it once was. But I think a lot of our growth right now is coming from organic growth as opposed to the inorganic. And I think that's because we have chosen to focus on the niche that we focused on. And because we work with pre-IPO individuals now, we have a very clear message of what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's resonating with a lot of people.
I mean, I think it's probably interesting to buy the purchasing base of the books of business. I mean, being that you've bought 4 books of business over the years, you probably have kind of a good structure in place of knowing the value of the book and kind of knowing how to incorporate those names and numbers and the contacts into your database. And what's that process look like for maybe someone listening that's thinking about buying a book of business for their own business?
Yeah, so I'd say price is the most important. What are you paying for that book, and obviously the expected revenue. And the other thing that I'd say, if you're looking to acquire books of business, what you have to understand is some of the tax rules around that. So, when you purchase goodwill, which essentially is what you're doing, you're acquiring an intangible asset, and so the expense for acquiring that asset is amortizable over 15 years. So even though you might be paying the person off over 6, you're going to be taxed on even in that money's going out the door to that other person. You're not going to get the full deduction of what you're paying that person because of the amortization rules. So I'd say, step 1 is, figure out your cash flow, because, the tax bite is a lot bigger than you think it's going to be. After that point, when you start integrating other books of business, and again, I can only speak to my industry, you develop a playbook. Essentially is what happens, right? You talk with the advisor, and I bought from different kinds of advisors. So the first book I bought back in 2011, it was an advisor who had decided to retire. He was in his early 70s, and perfectly good health, just wanted to hang up his spurs, and so you put a transition plan in place and say, okay, you need an introduction. So that's usually a client letter that goes out letting people know that, there's going to be a change. And then, within a month of that, you start scheduling to meet with all the individual clients with the outgoing advisor. And for us, what we did was the outgoing advisor ran the first meeting pretty much in totality. And we sort of sat in the background and, just observed, wrote notes, did that sort of thing. And then the second meeting was a transition meeting, which happened 3 months after the first meeting. And that meeting we ran with the other advisor still present. And then by the next quarter's meeting, that's when the advisor was no longer there. But, occasionally the client, there was a question, and we'd reach out, to the retiring advisor or certainly the retiring. I mean, and as you're in the real estate industry, it's a relationship business. And so, you have strong relationships with your clients. And so occasionally the clients would check in with the other advisor, and, and that's fine. You have to be a little bit patient with that as well. So again, having that playbook is important, and making sure that the retiring advisor is on the same page. Also,
when you're bringing in, other individuals to your sphere, right? Your database, buying that book. That seems like it could be very, very time consuming, right? So how do you make sure that you stay on task with your current clients and also adapt these other clients?
So obviously leverage your admins as much as you can. There's if you're an advisor, you can, if there's a lot of data entry to do, even if you don't have a full-time admin, you can go out, hire someone abroad or domestic, to do some of that data entry work to take that off your plate. Cause you're right. You're going to be meeting with people more often, because the whole point is you're trying to get that book as sticky as you can before the other advisor, really leaves. It's in your best interest and the advisor's best interest, because usually there's a clawback on lost business, for a certain period of time. So again, you can't ignore your current book of business for sure, but you really got to pay attention. You got to be pretty hyper focused, on that new book, just to make sure you get everyone's still on board.
Well, thank you, Aaron, for being on the Road to Good podcast. One question, I'd be very curious. Do you think, looking back at that person, a young Aaron before he went to Spain, that person that took that accounting class, if you never took an accounting class, do you think you'd be in the field that you're in today?
No way.
No.
Gosh, if you kind of, redirected history a little bit, so that I never took an accounting class, I literally have no idea what I'd be doing today. I don't know who I'd be. I've honestly zero clue.
So, because you have kids, right? You have a couple kids?
I have three
kids. When you talk to your children or other people looking to kind of figure out what they want to do for a living, how broad of classes do you kind of advise them to take?
Oh my gosh, no one ever asked me my opinion on that. Although it is funny, I had a conversation yesterday with someone who's they're not an attorney, and they said, "Oh, my child wants to go to law school. Like, what should I tell them?" It's and there was another attorney on the call with me, and we're trying to put our heads together and figure out, like, what do you tell someone, because you can't know, right? Law, like, people, and I don't know if you went to law school or not, but you have no idea what law school is going to be like, and law school does not prepare you for the legal industry, what it's going to be like at all. So there's really no way to know until you're actually doing it. And so, you take your classes, and if I was thinking of someone who's an undergrad, obviously you got to take your core classes, but I would dabble a little bit here and there, because you're never going to know what your passion is until you really find it. So, again, I'd say, if you think you want to be a psych major, take a business class. Maybe it speaks to you. Take an accounting class. Especially when you're in college, there's lots of room to do that sort of thing. And still have it count towards whatever credit you might need. So I'd again, I wouldn't. it only goes so far, right? It's like, you don't. I wouldn't have any any capacity to take on like a computer science class. Maybe I'd give it a whirl, but I tried to learn BASIC in high school and I sucked. So, it's like, the idea of me learning Python or something else is laughable, but you got to try it out. You got to try out a little bit of everything.
Well, I think, like you said, right, we talked about what you picked up from law school is being open to opportunities. Whatever they might be, being open to opportunities. Someone might have opportunity that's a field that you never even thought about, but even doing a short-term internship to kind of get a gauge of that field could play a huge difference in your life.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And piggybacking on what I said before about the law school thing, what we all came to our general consensus was go ahead and either become a paralegal. If you think you want to do law, become a paralegal and see what it's like, or what the other guy said was shadow a bunch of people, see what they do all day. You may think to yourself, oh, patent attorney, that sounds great. I love biotech, I mean, look, I couldn't do it. I mean, even if I had the right background, I couldn't be. I mean, just, it sounds horrific to me. I know enough patent attorneys that it's just no. And I'm sure people would look at me and be like, accounting, are you serious? Never in my life. So I'm totally with you. Internships, I think, could be really valuable. And we have interns at our firm, who think they want to be financial advisors, and they sit down and meet with us and they learn what it's about. It's a good use of your time.
Well, thank you again, Aaron, for being here today. If someone's listening and they're looking for accounting work, CPA work, they have some questions. What's the best way of getting more information about you and your company?
Yeah, so you can check us out. Obviously, we got the website, wrpwealth.com, because we do work on the tax side. We do work on the investment financial planning side as well. And then you could look me on LinkedIn, or we're Twitter, WRP Advisory, or Facebook. All the big ones.
And I'll finish off with this very, very last question. So this is going back to my college years, but I know there's multiple different stock options that are allowed there and different abbreviations for the different stock options that are allowed. Can you throw out maybe a couple of them so people are listening and something that maybe rings to them? They go, oh, I remember my HR was talking about that stock option right there. Okay, I got to get more information about that. Can you throw a couple out?
Yeah. So if you have incentive stock options, ISOs, there's some really great tax opportunity out there for you, and perhaps give them some long-term capital gain treatment long-term. And then of course, the consequences of the exercise, really important. Non-qualified stock options, NQSO or NSO, depending on what you prefer. Again, that the delta between what you're going to pay for it and what it's actually worth, that ends up on your W-2. So you got to plan for that sort of thing. And then a lot of people nowadays are seeing RSUs at later stage companies, and they're those are ordinary income. As soon as the company goes public or is acquired, you're going to have a big jump on your tax return, and oftentimes they don't withhold enough, and so you got to plan for all those things.
Well, I know if you're listening, you're probably going to be rewinding a couple times to get all those abbreviations.
Sorry.
The easiest way to do it is to go in the show notes, go find Aaron. He can help you out to plan for the future, not just basically get a roadmap for the past. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe, please share, and go find Aaron. Bye, everyone.